Hello everybody, I'm Doug. Welcome to the Auditory Vinyl. This video is another episode in my series Record Labels A to Z, and actually on Q and R, but I'm going to go back to P for a second because I messed up and a couple people pointed it out. I showed this Philips label, and some of the information I gave was about this label, but I mentioned that Four Seasons were on this label, but they're not. They're on this Philips label. So when I was talking about the label, the information I gave, some of it was like half and half. Some of it was for this Philips label and some of it was for this. So I'm sure that's not the only mistake I've made up to this point. That's just one I got caught on. But we'll move on to Q, which I only have one. There's a few Q labels out there. Can't think of them off the top of my head. I think I saw Queen Bee was one, but the only one I have is Quest, which was started in 1980 by Quincy Jones. He signed George Benson and Patty Austin. It was originally just going to be, R&B and smooth soul type stuff. But he also had the Winans, the gospel group, and later actually New Order was on the label. But Jack Wagner is also on the label, which he's probably known better for his acting. He was in soap operas, and there's the Quest label. Yeah, a lot of soap operas, a lot of Hallmark type movies. But he's put out I think 6 albums, and I'm not sure what the hit was off of here, or if there was a hit. Anyway, Quest Records. Eventually in 2000, Quincy Jones sold it to Warner Brothers, and they've taken it over from there. So on to R. Rounder Records. Most of you have seen these labels. They've been around for a while, since 1970, independent label from Massachusetts. A lot of, well, then it was called folk, now it's called Americana, indie type stuff, bluegrass, and even some rock bands. Alison Krauss, George Thorogood, Lead Belly, Woody Guthrie, Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, those two that they did were on Rounder Records. And Norman Blake, this is an early one from 72. They eventually moved to Nashville, signed guys like Tim McGraw and Luke Bryan. They took over Flying Fish label and their artists in the 90s. There's Rounder Records. Norman Blake, he's put out a bunch of stuff and played on other people's records like Ronstadt and Fogelberg and those type of artists. Roulette Records started in 1957. This is another one that a lot of you have seen. It has ties with the mob, and that is was confirmed by Tommy James. Americana Sam did an interview with Tommy James on his channel. You should go check that out. It's really interesting. And Tommy James himself touches on the fact that the mob was a little bit involved with Roulette Records. This is mono version of Hanky Panky from '66. Also on the label, Frankie Lyman, Jimmy Rogers. Later in the '60s, Joey D and the Starlighters, Luke Christie. In the '80s, after sales had kind of slowed down, they started putting out some jazz stuff. By '89, they sold to EMI. But yeah, interesting stuff about the being involved with the mob. Again, go check out Americana Sam's interview with Tommy James. It's really cool. Riva Records, R-I-V-A. It's actually a British label, started in 1975 by Billy Gaff, manager of Rod Stewart at the time. So obviously Rod Stewart signed on. But that was only for his UK releases. For everywhere else, he stuck with Warner Brothers. I'm not sure how that legal stuff would work out, and I don't know, to me it'd be a little confusing. But John Cougar was also on Riva. This is his Jack and Diane on the Riva label. Eventually both Cougar and Stewart left, and they had a few other people on the label. Carmen Apiece was on there for one album, but like I say, they had some other smaller ones, and that was about it. I don't have the info on what happened. They're probably sold out to Warner Brothers. Oh, it shows Polygram on here, so maybe that's who they ended up selling out to. Regency Records. Now this is another one of them labels that, you know, I look at different websites to try to get information, and depending on which website I looked at, it showed a different date. Like they either started in '65 or '72. A band called Neutral Spirits was their first artist. And then later they signed a Dutch rock group called Diesel that had a lot of local hits and a lot of albums on the label. Steve Gillette was another one. It was actually started by the songwriters Jerry Lieber and Mike Stroller. Flying Burrito Brothers were also on the label. This is their Live in Tokyo from '79. Jeez. There's the Regency label. There's a newer Regency record label that isn't the same as this. They do some, I think, alternative and punk bands on their label. Yeah, Regency. Redbird started in 1964. Signed the Dixie Cups right off the bat. This is their mono release, Chapel of Love, which was their first big hit. Went right to #1. They also had Shangri-Las with Leader of the Pack, which was also another #1 hit. Here is the label. Also on here is the Aiko Aiko song, which was another big hit, which got a little extra surgence in the movie The Rain Man. I forget who it was, but somebody redid it, and song got popular all over again. Phil Spector was involved with the label, just as a manager of some of the bands. Also, George Golden was an executive who had a big gambling problem, and the mafia got involved, and he had to sell out, and the label disappeared. There's only a little bit of information I could find on the whole mafia ties, but yeah. Sally's, I don't know what she's doing. But that's it. Q&R and a flashback to letter P. Big one next. S. Should be plenty of those. Have a good day. Enjoy the music.